What's going on, boys? NealGuides here. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to use Overload the Ballside post patch, but how to keep using it without reducing your stamina. I've devised 3 new ways of using Overload the Ballside so you can keep using it post patch. In case you don't know, in the most recent patch, titled Update 12, what EA implemented is a system where your stamina reduces 2.4 times faster when you're using Overload the Ballside. So what that means is, as you can see in this picture depicted, this is stamina in a normal game 80 minutes. And as you can see on the second picture over here, this is a stamina in the same time 80 minutes but using Overload the Ballside the entire game. So obviously you can see here the effects are really vigorous on your player's stamina, and it does affect you in the game. But the 3 methods I found are workaround should I say. There's 3 different methods. I'll go through them each individually. One thing I would say to you, bear in mind what EA posted this image. This is mainly just Real Madrid, so this is not Ultimate Team. So Team of the Year, from what I've tested in the last couple of days, Team of the Year stamina doesn't really go down as much as, for example, someone like Cruz, Modric, and Vinicius Jr., etc. So let's go on to the first method. So the first method is actually using custom tactics. So what you want to do is you want to go to your custom tactic and you want to reduce the width to 1 or 2. Now this is going to basically emulate Overload the Ballside, so you could still use it for the entire game. So what you're doing is, typically speaking, the width's on 5. So if you reduce your width to 1 and 2, as you can see, your team contracts and you basically emulate Overload the Ballside. So that means you can use 1 or 2 width the entire game and not have to turn on Overload the Ballside, and you can basically get the same effect. As you can see on the screen, this is just in the first off, as you can see, I just have 2 width in this game, and as you can see, if you look at both my left back and right back, you see how narrow they are. So it's very similar to Overload the Ballside. I'm not using Overload the Ballside, I'm just using 1 or 2 width. So this is one way to emulate Overload the Ballside. The only thing I would say is just do be careful, because when you're using this, one thing I would say is your wings are going to be open. So this is the way I wouldn't suggest, because your opponent can still exploit you down the wing. So yes, it's like using Overload the Ballside the entire game, but obviously you can't change this in game. So that means you have to be on Overload the Ballside 24/7. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could make the exact same tactic again and have one where the width is much higher and have one where the width is lower. But what this is going to do is basically, in order for you to transition from one dynamic tactic to the other, it's going to take some time. So it's not really reactive as Overload the Ballside. So that's the first way. I wouldn't really recommend this. Maybe if you're like a Gold 3 player and maybe you're not that too in tune with maybe using D-pad tactics and you just want a quick and easy fix, then use 1 or 2 width. This is going to emulate Overload the Ballside, and you're still going to have the same desired effect without getting the loss on stamina. Now the second way of doing it is a more effective way of using Overload the Ballside in game. Just maybe to give you an accurate representation, this is a clip, for example. As you can see, I lose the ball. Now generally speaking, when you lose the ball and you're on the defensive side, your team is quite spread out with a natural width. So this is not when you're using 1 width, this is just like when you're using a normal 5 or 6 width in a game. You can use Overload the Ballside sporadically or intermittently depending on types of the game. Now, contrary to belief, your stamina doesn't get affected if you don't have the ball. So while you have possession of the ball, let's say for example like here, while you have possession of the ball, if you have Overload the Ballside on, your stamina doesn't go down. That's the first thing. That's the biggest misconception. Stamina is not affected when your team has the ball. It's only once you kind of basically lose possession, for example like so, and if you have Overload the Ballside on now, then your team's stamina gets affected. So the way to counteract this is basically have a system where you only use Overload the Ballside for specific moments in a game. So this is an example where in a game my opponent's got the ball and obviously he's going to come down to me towards the middle of the pitch. So this is one of the best times to use Overload the Ballside. You press down the D-pad, then you press right, and just focus on how wide the team is now. Then and what I do is I press down the D-pad and then I press right and I activate Overload the Ballside. And you see how instantaneous my team just contracts? You see that? So it went from a width to being about here, and it's kind of congested inwards to about here. So this is a good way of using Overload the Ballside. So basically, as soon as you basically lose possession of the ball and you find there's an imminent danger coming towards you, then activate Overload the Ballside, win the ball back, and then as soon as you win the ball back, turn Overload the Ballside back off again. So you're basically only using for some key moments, you're barely losing any stamina. This will give you a bit of a better depiction. I want you to focus at, for example, the team. I want you to focus on how the team is moving. As you can see, it's quite spread out. I'm using a width of 6 here. So the key thing is using a high width. So I like to use 6 width. And what I like to do is, I said, focus on the entire back line. Just focus on the midfield, how they're acting. So let's say, for example, in this key position, As you can see, my opponent's got the ball. So what I do is I press down the D-pad, activate overload the ball side. So just for this defensive phase, as you can see, my team contracts. And this is one way that you can use overload the ball side. For me, this is the most effective way because then you have complete total control. And then once you finish with your defensive stance, then you can turn overload the ball side off. So you're only using it when you're defending. Now this is one of the most effective ways of using it. Now the key with this is you're only using it in key aspects. So what people do this is actually a better version of overload the ball side. You'll see pros using overload the ball side as well in this way, because the reason why is let's say your opponent happened to do a through ball. Let's say this person was going to run down the wing, and let's say your opponent was going to do a through ball down the wing. You would have been screwed here by using overload the ball side. So what you're basically doing is you're only using overload the ball side when the ball's in the center of the pitch. That way you can defend without actually having the negative effects of the stamina and also not getting down the wing. Because we all know one of the only weak points of overload the ball side is getting beaten down the wing. But if you use overload the ball side in this way, so let's say for example, okay, in this situation I've realized, okay, you know what, my opponent's going to now go towards the center of the pitch. If you reduce your width now, so and this defensive phase, you can use overload the ball side, control the center of the pitch. And if the ball went to a wide situation and you're anticipating a through ball, then you can turn it off again. As you can see here, I want to be very narrow, very compact in defense. Then as soon as I win the ball back, as you can see, then I deactivate overload the ball side. So I'm only using overload the ball side when my opponent's got the ball, when I'm getting pinned in my half, or let's say I'm trying to close out the win and my opponent's got the ball and he's going down the middle of the pitch. That is when I use overload the ball side, which will confuse him. He won't know what to do and it'll be hard for him to defend. Before we get on to the third and final way, I just wanted to take a quick opportunity to say, if you want to follow me on twitch.tv/NealGuides, I stream my weekend league every single weekend there, and I stream sporadically during the week. You can follow me and you can watch me. Don't forget, it's completely free. I have my controller on the screen, so if you ever want to ask a question in the chat, maybe ask how to do a certain skill move, how to do something specific, just ask me. I read every single question in the chat. So it's a very interactive stream. This way you can ask me a question and I can get back to you as soon as I can. Don't forget, watching me is completely free and I stream on twitch.tv/NealGuides. Link will be in the description. I also wanted to say, if you ever wanted to get better at FIFA and maybe let's say you weren't really, the YouTube videos are not elaborate enough, I have kind of a FIFA school series on my Patreon. So as you guys know, I do this full time. It takes hours and hours of time to make these videos. I have elaborate videos for, let's say for example, how to use a ball roll, for example, and when to use it, when should you use it, what's the benefits of using it. So if you ever want to get better at FIFA and you want to become a better player, you can always subscribe to my Patreon. As I said, full money back guarantee if you don't improve on FIFA, and all the proceedings go towards making these videos, paying for the equipment and paying for the services. Link will be in the description down below for my Patreon. Now going back to the third and final way, if you want a more pragmatic approach, let's say for example, as a player, maybe you're not 2-2 but using overload the ball side in the first place, you only used it on for the entire game, and you want a more simpler approach, and let's say you don't want to be confined to using the one width on the tactics because you don't prefer it because you get exploited down the wings, or let's say for example you don't want to use it sporadically in the game. The third and final one is to use it, for example, let's say when you're winning 2-1 in the last 30 minutes. I'll go over stamina in a second, but the most important thing when using overload the ball side is only use it for a specific key area or specific moment. So if you're not that too in tune with using one width, or you don't want to use it sporadically, you can use it, for example, if you're winning in a set. So let's say it's the 70th minute and you're winning 2-1. You can then activate overload the ball side for the remainder of the game. So what I'm saying is, let's say for example you're winning and you don't need to score any more goals, but you want to be more solid defensively, or let's say, as they typically say, park the bus, then you can use overload the ball side in the final 20 minutes in the game. This would be really beneficial because towards 70 minutes, as I said, your stamina is going to be quite drained naturally, and most of your opponent's stamina is going to be drained anyway. So if you're going to close out the game at 2-1, 3-1, losing that stamina is not going to cost you. One thing I would say is, people always say that, if you turn overload the ball side on and off, only turning it on when you lose the ball, this makes no difference. Don't forget, EA have confirmed when you activate overload the ball side, once you have it on, it only affects stamina once you don't have the ball. So if your opponent has the ball and you have overload the ball side on, then your stamina is going to get reduced. So if you have the ball, overload the ball side, the stamina doesn't get affected because you're not overloading, because it's a defensive tactic and you have the ball. So people always say the biggest misconception is you can turn overload the ball side on as soon as you lose the ball. this doesn't really help you because you're going to lose the same amount of stamina anyway. So it's pointless turning overload the ball side on when you lose the ball because it's going to have the same desired effect. So as I said, use it. So let's say, as I said, when you're winning 2-1 in 70 minutes, turn it on for the entire game. One thing I would say to you is stamina more than ever now gets affected quite a lot. I think goal players, like for example, someone like Lucas with 76 stamina, overload the ball side is really going to affect him, especially if you use it the entire game. That's why I wouldn't recommend it. And I would say I did some testing with some Team of the Year players. Now, even the Team of the Year players with 99 stamina, they still lose stamina quite vigorously. So maybe they don't go as down as much as, for example, someone who's got 80 stamina only. Maybe they don't go like completely to the red zone, but they still go to like the deep yellow zones. They still significantly lose a lot of stamina. So do bear that in mind. Team of the Year players are not going to help you in this instance so much. Yes, it might reduce it to a little bit, maybe not be as effective on the stamina, but it's still going to kill you. So even if you've got a full Team of the Year team using overload the ball side the entire game, you're still going to lose stamina heavily. One thing I would say more than anything, you need to apply a fitness every single match. So after you finish a match, especially in Foot Champions, I think now more than ever, you need to apply a fitness. So make sure you have 99 fitness, because now if you use overload the ball side, even I tested for 45 minutes, your stamina still goes down significantly. So whether you use it sporadically or whether you use it for the entire game, you want to apply fitness at the end of every game. So just to recap, you have the original way, which is the one width. As I said, I wouldn't really recommend this too much because, as I said, if your opponent goes down the wing, there is a potential you're going to get exploited. But this may be for the players that want to use overload the ball side the entire game and maybe are just not used to it. The second way, as I said, is using overload the ball side, but the key thing is using it with a higher width. So you use it sporadically in a game. So you only use it, for example, if your opponent's going down the wing, you don't use overload the ball side. If he's going down towards center, then you use overload the ball side to contract the middle. Don't forget, it's pointless to have a narrow width. If you want to use it to a high level, have a high width so naturally you cover the wing area, so you stop the ball going down the wing. And then when your opponent does come on the inside, then you activate overload the ball side. So that way you get the best of both worlds. You defend the wing position and then use overload the ball side for like 20 seconds at key moment just to defend that segment. And then the third and final way, as I said, just to use it for the remainder 30 minutes of the game. But as I said, the key thing is if you are going to use overload the ball side and you use method number 2 and 3, just do have a higher width. This way, you can even if you're losing, for example, and you want to press, the last thing you want to do is you don't want to be too contracted and you don't want to be too narrow when you don't have the ball and you're basically defending. It's really, really hard to kind of get out of that situation. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. Take it easy, boys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out. If you do have any other questions, of course, do let me know in the comments down below. Just to say, I don't use overload the ball side. The reason I made this video is because I'm here to inform you. And at the end of the day, if I don't make this video, someone else is going to make it anyway. So it makes no difference whether I make the video because everyone's going to know about it eventually. Thank you very much for watching. Take it easy, boys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.